Lions continue to put together their 53-man roster, leaving one spot still open as of now after being assigned 2 players off of the waiver wire through claims, as well as releasing their initial 15-man practice squad. So let's get right into it. So today we have 2 new additions to talk about, as well as going through the Lions practice squad. But let's start with the 2 new additions via the waiver wire. The Lions went to the defensive line, added some depth. The edge position, we know we were very thin. We had essentially 3 edge rushers. Now, there's some flexibility. Pat O'Connor can kick out there, for example. But for the most part, we were sitting at 3 edge rushers, and the Lions went out and claimed one. And let's start there first. That is Tyrus, the edge rusher from the Dallas Cowboys, a 25-year-old former undrafted free agent out of Mississippi State back in 2023 that played a ton in this year's preseason, played over 140 snaps in 3 games in this year's preseason at 6'2", 265. And he was the player that stood out, 1, because he played a ton of snaps, but 2, because of the pass rushing prowess that he represents. He has an ability to win in a variety of ways, had a lot more bend and slither and change of pace and nuance as a pass rusher than what I anticipated. He's not the biggest power player in terms of true explosion, speed to power, get off. First step isn't elite off the line of scrimmage as a pass rusher, but he had a variety of ways that he could win, and his bull rush entry points were very smooth as a pass rusher. Twitch within his game. There's a twitch to his shed, his hand usage, as well as some of the agility that he carried, some of the lateral movement skills, some of the short area quickness, his ability to step in front, get in front of gaps, to wrap over gaps as a run defender specifically. When he got out in space on boot action plays, the ability to be comfortable working in space, change directions, get flat down the line of scrimmage. Just some of the short area movement skills, the agility that he presented was super noticeable. He's got a lanky build to him. I feel like he was overly forceful and powerful, specifically like in the upper body. There was a touch of pop there, but it didn't feel like overly heavy hands on initial point of entry. There was some real strength that you felt in the core and kind of the hips when he could really drive. His vision was very noticeable. He played the game with a really nice play speed, the positioning, how fast he would settle himself down. Again, we talked about the lateral movement skills, some of the shed ability that would come from that. The Euro step footwork as a pass rusher. I saw him throwing a Euro step move on the outside. I saw him spin back inside, outside wins. You saw the ability to just win with speed off the edge, specifically by setting it up with slight changes of paces, attacking half-man opportunities as well, different changes of pace by being a little bit more sudden. You could sit him into the interior, let him work on a guard, and he had the kind of bend and slither where he could at least get an edge. He may not always finish in those spots. I don't know that he actually has the great second gear when closing, but he did show enough slither in the upper body to be a little bit difficult to get hands on and just create some havoc if you want to kick him inside. And that could be an early valuable role. A little chop move with his hand usage. There was a shake bull rush that seemingly was pretty effective. Again, some of the natural agility that he carried. He had 8 pressures on 144 snaps in this year's preseason. Grayed out incredibly well against the run. And this is the area where I'm sure the Lions were pretty invested. Early to his spots, handling tight ends adequately one-on-one, maybe not always the most dominant against tackles at the point of attack in terms of being able to sustain an anchor, constantly walk guys back as a pass rusher or drive guys back beyond the initial punch, but he did typically set in pretty well early, and he used that length well to lock out and create some distance and some separation. Speed to power transition to me isn't overly explosive. You could knock him off his spot if you're trying to hinge block him out of the play, it felt like. Staining that edge, heavy hands weren't as noticeable within his game. So it wasn't as much about the power element, though he played with some of that variety to his game as a rusher. It was more so about just a variety of ways that he could win as a rusher. And then as a run defender, it was how fast that he played, his ability to work over gaps, scream over gaps with a lot of good effort, having the length to finish as a defender as well. I can understand why, based on having Nate Lynn and guys like Isaac Ukwu, where the Lions would look at a guy like Tyrus and feel like this is an upgrade over those pieces, specifically at that edge position. I get that, because I think there's a more well-rounded nature to Tyrese Wheat's game. And while his production isn't outstanding for the amount of snaps that he played, him showing just the multitude of ways to win and having that speed to power presence to him where his bull rush entry was very positive, and he played really low upfield. He played with a really good, consistent leverage as a pass rusher, some ankle strength that he could tap into as well to flatten the arc, to flatten the edge. That seemed much more translatable than I think some of like Nate Lynn's wins in that final preseason game. The other addition is someone I'm a little bit more familiar with from college, Tyler Lacy, a former 5th-round pick out of Oklahoma State. I can remember Tyler Lacy coming out at 6'4", 285, so big end defensive tackle in a 4-3 defense. He's a player that played with a very violent punch at the point of attack, similarly to a guy like Wheat. I thought his strength was he played really fast. He was very quick to settle himself in, early positioning with really good quickness there specifically. He also carried a little bit of slither. Again, that ability to go from run to pass, the ability to get an edge. Of course, also some of that is just strain and the ability to continue working on the play. but also getting your hands on first. Now you can see there are some issues of kind of getting knocked off a spot when he's forced to play a little bit more in the interior here, lined up at that 2 technique, really just driving his legs through it, not really noticeable. You can see the early hands, but he's not really creating that force through the lower body so that you can transition and then you can have that second effort to win success. And he had very fast placement with his hands. His first step as a pass rusher was a real plus, specifically from the interior, which was noticeable. And he's had really good length to him as well, which the Lions typically value from the defensive lineman. I did love his effort to get on an edge as a pass rusher, and he felt very smart when watching him. Some of the knocks were, again, pure anchor ability against double teams. Some of the size, some of the ability to sit down and bend within the lower body felt a little bit limited. The initial entry, it felt like he would get caught a little bit. Like, for example, with Tyrus with his hand usage, while he was very twitchy, sometimes he just didn't seemingly have the ability to always disengage that much or create that much separation. And then you wondered about some of the counter moves that he could actually tap into with his hand usage. It was more so about his ability to contort his body and be a little bit tough to get hands on and just find small angles and creases. As for Tyler Lacy, it felt like he could get caught on his initial entry, kind of get latched inside, and there really wasn't a lot that he could tap into once it got to that point. However, with some of the immediate quickness that Tyler Lacy presents at his size, his length, I do view him as more of a big defensive end. So I think even though he's listed as a D tackle, that's a sub-package usage. I think for the Lions, where they're at defensive end, I tend to kind of look at Tyler Lacy like a fourth defensive end. The big end, the player that's going to settle down, deal with tight ends at the point of attack, get him out a little bit wider, put him in kind of his more natural element, thinking of the Josh Pascals in the meantime, the Mekhi Wingo type of role, the John Kaminsky's, even DeMarcus Walker, just because we talked about him in the past. Guys like that, more like a Keith Cooper. That's where I think Tyler Lacy fits in. I actually think that's the best spot for him rather than having to get pushed around on the interior. Another young player here, only 25 years old, and my guess is the Lions are definitely looking for one, depth, specifically DN type of role, again, with a guy like Mekhi Wingo kind of fitting into that build as well. Specifically, maybe some potential third down pass rush upside where you could put him out in those spots. They were using Keith Cooper in that role with the first team. So as of now, they don't really have a great option there. So that are the two new additions. Now, onto the practice squad, a lot of familiar faces, the 15 that have been mentioned right now, all Lions within the preseason. So let's go through it. First off, Myles Adams. This is the one that I was excited about. I wanted Myles Adams back. I thought he had a case to make the 53. I think between him and a guy like Tyler Lacy, there's some similarities in their play style. I think it's very possible that Myles Adams is activated or elevated for multiple games this season and that he finds himself on the field. And that could come early. It was a great get back. He fits what we like to do schematically. At least last year, he fit very well. And I think that he was showing in the preseason just a lot of consistency, ability to win as a rusher, giving you some upside there, and the ability to win against one-on-one blocks specifically. Ronnie Bell, another good get back, just a very reliable pass catcher for us. Really nice route runner. Play speed's a little bit more middling, specifically for Ronnie Bell. He's not going to take the top off. We know there's some special teams versatility, but he also was an elite blocker through preseason as well. I'm a big Ronnie Bell fan coming from Michigan. Tristan Colon, another fantastic get back for the Lions. I'm kind of surprised this happened, but I think the injury probably had a lot to do with it. But getting Tristan Colon back is massive. When this guy's right, I think we're going to see him elevated multiple games, and especially as we're waiting for Miles Frazier. I think that even though Kingsley made the team, when healthy, I would trust Tristan Colon as our best backup center. So I think it's very real that as soon as he's healthy and he's ready to go, whenever that is, Tristan Colon is our best backup interior offensive lineman. I think that's still on the table. And I think ultimately we're going to probably see it at some point this season. So he's one of those guys that I would be protecting every week. Speaking of Keith Cooper Jr., he is on the Lions practice squad. Clearly they were big fans of Keith Cooper, and I think this is the perfect spot for him. I don't think he's ready for the active roster. I don't think he's ready for the 53, but he is in a good spot with, again, length, skill set that reminds you of these guys that I just talked about, some versatility up front, flashed a little bit more towards that last preseason game. He is truly in that kind of developmental stage right now. This is the perfect place to have him, and I think by maybe the end of the year or into next year, that's where you look for that jump to try to make himself a contributor and lock himself onto the roster. Eric Hallett, again, another great get back here. The guy played all over the place in the preseason. Lions were able to go out and get Thomas. So you mix him and Eric Hallett, both coming from the same defense in Jacksonville specifically, and a guy that had one of the stronger, I think, preseason/training camps for the Lions, really playing everywhere for us, but I think more naturally playing at the safety role. Lions always value versatility, and he adds that. Zach Horton is back, which gives the Lions flexibility to elevate him as a fullback heading into a game. I think there's tons of special teams upside with Zach Horton as well. Had a couple of receptions, showed some naturalness when the ball was thrown his direction, which was a little bit above my expectation, which was nice to see because we just didn't really have much of that film at Indiana. Tom Kennedy, of course. I mean, nothing really needs to be said here. I'm just going to leave it there. Tom Kennedy. Jackson Meeks, fantastic in the preseason, maybe our best performer at the receiver spot in the preseason, and he didn't even do anything in that last game. It was really 3 games that he was great. Great blocker, special teams value as a gunner potentially here. And there's also the element that he was really good as a pass catcher. Without Tim Patrick, I think this is a really nice piece to have because of his size, his inside-outside flexibility that he showed. The route tree, I think, could be similar to a guy like Tim Patrick. So I think it's a fantastic backup in the practice squad. Specifically, Mason Miller, I think he was better at guard. This was a player that I thought when we initially did our UDFAs going way back, he was one of those kind of dark horses to make the team. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I think the Lions may have found something working him at right guard. Of course, they'll probably continue to rep him at tackle too, but I think they found something at guard. He can move guys. Now we just need consistency at guard. But that being said, that wasn't his spot in college, and he's already taking a massive competition jump. So it's understandable. Again, it's a good spot for him. Speaking of, man, the offensive line, we got some dudes back. I mean, Michael Neese, throw him into this mix, as well as Dan Skipper. Like, the Lions got a lot of dudes back on the old line, and they also still kept around Jamarco Jones, Kingsley Egukan, Giovanni Manu, KO, really in a good spot with this whole line right now with who they were able to keep. I know they can't protect all of these guys, but Michael Neese, another guy that is available right now. I think there's a world in which he could be elevated. I mean, it depends on where Graham's health is at, but wherever Graham is at, he could absolutely be elevated week one. I mean, it's on tape. Doesn't mean he has to start, but he could be elevated at least to have him available. Like right now, he's our backup center behind Kingsley Egukan to me, but I would personally probably have more trust in him in a game, in a regular season game right now to go Michael Neese over Egukan, and I think there could be some of that this season. They could dabble with that. Anthony Pittman, one of the best special teamers that we've had that I can remember as a Lions fan. He is an elite special teamer, and specifically in the past on kickoff teams. Now it's a little bit different now, so it's more one-on-one, but he still plays with that fire and that ball of energy that you like. Lawrence Strickland, getting him back was nice as well. Had him on the 53 this past year. This is fantastic depth for Strickland. He had a pretty strong preseason when we did get to see him, and obviously he finished on a super high note. Dan Skipper, enough said there. It's great to have Dan Skipper back. I'm sure they're going to be protecting him. Then Isaac Ukwu. I think the interesting element to this is that they were able to get Isaac Ukwu back specifically because he was the guy that finished the last two games with some of his best performances. I thought that he had a case to say, I'm over Nate Lynn, but the Lions didn't keep either of those guys. But Isaac Ukwu is a Lion edge rusher. Powerful, gritty, pretty smart against the run, set the edge better than most of our backup edge defenders, and he added a little bit. I think he added a touch more to his pass rush this year. It wasn't enough to make the team, but he added a touch to this. Interestingly enough, there are multiple players that the Lions didn't end up bringing back, one of them being Hendon Hooker, but of course he was picked up by the Carolina Panthers. Nate Lynn was also not brought back by the Lions. I don't think he's been signed anywhere yet specifically. I don't think he was claimed by anybody, so I think he's a free agent. Broderick Martin got scooped by the Kansas City Chiefs, which I think is a good fit. They look for those big body nose tackles to just hang at that one or the zero technique, so I actually think that's going to end up being a really good spot for him, and I'm rooting for him over there, except for when we play them. But I think that's going to be a good spot for him to get right because they've always had that kind of piece. So it's not like the big name, but it's always been an effective piece. So I think that's a good addition for them. But just something to kind of keep an eye. We'll keep an eye on all the updates there. But there's only 15 players on the practice squad right now, which technically means there is still one spot open on that practice squad. We only have two quarterbacks. So my assumption is that they may be searching out to try to see what kind of quarterback they want to bring in. Maybe Jake Fromm, some sort of quarterback to the practice squad because Hendon Hooker's gone. I would think they want to throw somebody on their developmental, and that one spot could go right to Zedarius, and it would be beautiful. So that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.